All right, let's begin. Thank you for joining us today for our Tech Talk Cybersecurity Services. Are your control systems at risk? My name is Chris Powell. I'm with Process Industries US Services Marketing. And speakers today will be Dave Willert and John Brockovich from our Advanced Services team. Dave has been with ABB for several years. He's a digital services engineer with a primary focus on cybersecurity services. And John is the operations manager of the Advanced Services team. He's been with ABB for over a decade with a primary focus on cybersecurity services for the last few years. And so I will now hand it over to Dave.
Cybersecurity is getting more important now more than ever. Um, you can see some stats here, and we don't want to overwhelm you with all of the previous cybersecurity cases like WannaCry, NotPetya, ransomware in the past. Um, just kind of bring it to light that these happen all the time. There is actually just Monday of this week, there was a suspected cyber attack on telecommunication companies within the US. It was suspected to be a denial of service attack on T-Mobile, Sprint, and a couple other ones that disrupted a lot of telecommunications throughout most of the day. I know it happened to my wife. She couldn't get any texts or phone calls. It was a good excuse for her, anyways, throughout most of the day. And by the end of 2020, we expect to have roughly 200 billion connected devices for IoT. Just from an ABB standpoint, um, ABB has approximately 70 million devices that can be connected and need to be secured um, on customer systems, whether they're connected to the internet or not. We have those 70 million devices. And how do we keep those secure? Um, a lot of those practices we're going to cover in this webinar here. But just from a detection standpoint, there's something called a dwell time or a median dwell time, which is the average time that it takes for somebody to detect a an infection on their network or in their system. And in 2019, that average dwell time was 56 days. So it took almost 2 months for the average IT department or system to figure out that they were infected. Granted, back in 2011, it was 416 days, so we've come a long way. Um, but, you know, according to the US Department of Homeland Security, about 98% of these incidents um, can be mitigated with just basic cyber processing controls. So, as far as the current industry challenges that ABB has noticed, there are a number of them, and over the years uh, we've done our research, we did our homework, we've gone through everything. We've noticed that there are increasing threats to industrial control systems as more of them, ours run on Windows operating systems. As much as Microsoft would like to say otherwise, there are a significant number of flaws in the software that we use. There's security vulnerabilities, and more are being exposed every day. So we have to stay on top of those threats and increase the security to prevent uh, any sort of issues. We've also seen more data connectivity. So IT and OT are starting to converge more and more. We have a lot of customers that have a good network set up and a good division. We'll talk about the network layers in a little bit. Um, but we do have our IT systems or our corporate IT systems for the customers connecting to the process control systems. It's supposed to be for more management, but that also offers up more security risks that we need to control. We also get customers that want to extend the lifespan of their system. Microsoft, their operating systems go end of life after 7, 8 years. Um, and our customers want to extend their systems a little bit longer. So extending these systems is a large challenge for ABB, especially when it comes to maintenance costs to upgrade their systems to newer systems, and then of course replacing older hardware. And then, we have lack of tools and lack of situational awareness. So our customers don't know where to start. There's a lot of things that you can do, and cybersecurity can be very overwhelming. So our customers need to know where to start, and ABB can help them with that. And of course, we know a lot of the workforce in the process industries group is aging. They have a great high value knowledge. They are very well informed and knowledgeable about their processes. Now, when you're adding cybersecurity into it, that is a different wrench that they're not trained for. So ABB is trying to help those customers out by taking some of the burden off of the employees and making things a bit easier. As we have more assets that get connected to the IT network and the OT network, more smart devices, more connected devices, there are different ways that these need to be secured, and they also open up different realms of attack for our customer systems. Just like John mentioned with the smart devices at home, you add more connected devices to a network, that's more areas of attack that you're open for. And we have a lot of industry standards. There are so many industry standards out there, depending on your industry, depending on your customer. Some customers have to deal with multiple standards, and if they don't adhere to those standards, they can be fined either by by the government or by their corporate entity that's maintaining them. And it can also increase their insurance policies. Uh, it can cause a lot of money if they're not adhering to these standards the way that they should be. And then just an overall awareness of cybersecurity has grown significantly over the past few years. We work really hard to keep our systems secure. We try to pass that information on to the customers, and our customers are learning more and more why it's important every day. And just as a little fun fact for you, 90% of the data in the world was created in just the last 2 years, if you could imagine that. So there's been significant and exponential growth in the cyber realm throughout the past few years.
So with that, there's a lot of issues that our customers face, but what's the reality? Unfortunately, there's no 100% absolute security. Why is that? There's 0-day threats. So what's that mean? As soon as we release the next antivirus definition file or patch for software, some guys out there are hacking into it. Dave, what would you say if I were to tell you I was air gapped? Would you say I was secure?
Absolutely not. Air-gapped systems, you still have to get the data in and out of that system somehow. So whether it's removable media or, if you're truly air-gapped, you still have to get that data in and out. And it's pretty common for customers to say, yeah, I do have an air gap, but then we point to a historian that's connected to their corporate network and the control network, and we see that they don't in fact have a true air gap.
Right. There's always some backdoor that they forget about. So the other thing is process. Cyber's, it's not a sprint, it's not a race, but it's it's an evolving target. You got to have a lot of processes in place, and we'll be going over that here shortly. But um, it's not just one individual thing that you can apply and then set it and forget it. Just this morning, as an example, for this last section, I was in a discussion with the Department of Energy, and we talked about balance. What was the right balance for their upgraded control system? How will it impact the usability, the cost, and what kind of compliance can they get to make sure they're meeting the demands of the government? So all these things kind of roll up together and give you that guiding principle for cybersecurity. And from that, it's really three main pillars. You got your people, your customer, of course, needing to train and identify that cybersecurity is important in the organization. And then you got to consider us too. We're a part of that people process. We're there as the trusted advisor, help bring solutions and services to their control systems to make them more secure. The process can be from a document telling them how to do an update to a key policy on how we do USB removable media and things of that nature. So that is the second pillar. And then of course you have your technology. You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars, but if you turn off the certain features, or you don't have the right people trained on how to use it, that it all just kind of goes out the window. Dave, I think you have a pretty good example of one of those situations that kind of covers all three of these, right?
Right. Yeah, we had a customer that experienced a ransomware attack a couple of years ago, and part of the issue was they had their corporate network linked to their process control network, and somebody on the corporate network got a phishing email. They clicked the link, and it spread over to the control network. And the ransom, after the system was fully encrypted, was about $20,000. They spent $20,000 on the ransom to decrypt the system, and shortly after that ended up spending about $2 million on upgrades and recovery of the system because they couldn't actually fully recover the system. So they upgraded to the latest and greatest technology, put all these processes in place, and now their main issue is they don't have the resources to maintain both their policies and the technology. So they still ask ABB for help in maintaining that for them.
Yeah, really good example.
And we have, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of defense in depth. It's one of the most popular buzzwords when it comes to cybersecurity. And it's basically security through layers. Don't rely on just one security method to keep yourself safe. It's not going to be enough. There's a lot of different layers. Your physical security, obviously, having card key access to the control room, to specific special assets in the building. You don't just let some average Joe off the street walk in and start poking around. That's most of the time that's common sense, but some of it needs to go a little bit above and beyond that. Have the appropriate procedures and protocols in place so you can handle if an employee with critical access to the system leaves the company and is a disgruntled employee, we'll say. Or, if your administrator goes on vacation and he's sitting on a beach and your system goes down, how do you handle that? And then, of course, you have some of the more technical side of things, your firewall controlling the traffic, computer policies, so that's controlled by your domain controller, who's allowed to log into what machine and what security settings are in place. Account management, so user accounts, not everybody should be sharing the same user account or writing it down on a post-it note underneath the keyboard or attached to the monitor. Security updates and antivirus solutions, those are all low-hanging fruit that you can do, patching regularly and updating your antivirus on a regular basis. There are others, but these are enough to get you started. And why should our customers choose ABB for cybersecurity services? Um, we do have some key advantages. Obviously, if they have an ABB system, it would help significantly if the vendor was there to support them on all their cybersecurity efforts. We are able to protect our systems because we know our systems. We know our products. We can help the customer IT group understand the importance of the way that we do things within our systems. You know, we can't just reboot a machine whenever the IT department wants. That's not the way that it works. So we go through and we train our customers how to do things. You know, we share some knowledge, obviously, but we do a lot of the service ourselves to help them out, because they typically don't have the bandwidth to do so. You know, ABB's been doing this a long time. Cybersecurity has been very important, especially within the past 10 years, and ABB has stepped up their game and moved forward throughout those years to stay on the cutting edge of technology to get the best cybersecurity practices that we could get into our customers' hands and verified and validated that they work with our ABB systems. And then, of course, we have a proven approach. You know, the can't say that the first customer we rolled this out on anymore, because a lot of these cybersecurity services we've been doing them for years. You know, personally, I do patching and antivirus stuff all the time. You know, we do a lot of disaster recovery services. We do whitelisting. We do device control, which we'll talk about all that. But we do a lot of these on a routine basis. So we have the expertise to streamline all of these processes where the customer may not have that information.
Right. So where would you begin? You know, through this picture, you can see that we can definitely start with the no risk to the system. If the customer or your customer is unsure of their current status, we can do a benchmark or a fingerprint. Dive into the data, find all the low-hanging fruit, and give them maybe a path or recommendation forward on how to resolve some of these risks that they have in their system. You know, our customer systems have, you know, been out there for several years, so things change. Not only is it vulnerabilities within our operating systems, but you don't know what's been installed on there lately. And we'll go over some of that in more detail. Implement, some customers may just be like, yeah, I already know I'm already behind here. Come out and help us with patching. But those findings from the fingerprints and benchmarks, we can come in and lock down some of those services or firewalls, things of that nature. But we really want to get into that performance accelerator and wrap it in that security product. And we want to be able to maintain that on a routine basis and keep that risk gap much smaller. And it really ties in your people, process, and technology again. So, you know, we're the people that are going to be helping you maintain that, and we have the right technology and processes in place to keep that risk gap much smaller. So what does that mean when we kind of go over that? Here's a kind of a good look at what some of this portfolio looks like for ABB at the IA level and here in, of course, in the US. So we want you to start in this trusted advisor area where we can identify all your risks and maybe do some gap analysis for certain products or areas, and then we can come in and implement. If your customers are aware of certain situations, like for example, you know, Microsoft patching's a pretty easily identified. Yeah, we have those services to immediately come in and help them out. But then we would want to migrate them towards the more auto and more online type of solutions, so we could do security update services and things like that. So you can see there's quite a mature portfolio here. And as I said in the beginning, security takes time. So we have about every flavor for our customers to get involved or get them to the next step of their maturity model.
So going through this, you know, you guys have seen this before as well, the diagnose, implement, and sustain. This is something that moves in also with those pillars. So we are looking to diagnose any issues. And our people, we have the right tools, we have the right technology to help our customer diagnose any issues and diagnose where their gaps are. So we can tell them this is where your gaps are. We do have customers that are self-maintainers. All they're looking for is the diagnose portion. Come in and tell me what's wrong with my system, and I can take it from there. And for some customers, that's great. Other customers, they want us to come in, hey, these are all the gaps that we found in your system. And to alleviate some of these gaps or all of these gaps, it all depends, again, on finding that right balance. These are the services that we can implement for you. So we can come in and we can do patching. We can put in some centralized security management solutions to make their lives easier. And then going into that sustain portion where we can do collaborative operations so we can continuously monitor the security of their system. And then if anything varies slightly or the risk starts to rise in that system, we can go in or notify them to take some action. Um, and and when it comes to the sustaining of cybersecurity, like John mentioned, it is not a destination. It's about the journey. You're never going to get there because new vulnerabilities come out all the time. Things change all the time. So we just try to help the customer stay on top of that as best as we can, keeping their systems up to date.
So, going back to that original picture, you start with the diagnosis stage. So when you start that benchmark, it can evolve very quickly into the fingerprint or monitoring with extended advisor. So, there's three main areas that these services do. You go through procedures and protocols. So what is that? That's an interview with the customer. We're identifying some of their organization and who's responsible for certain areas of cybersecurity. What kind of access control do they have for certain areas and maintenance plans in place, things like that. Then we go over your group policy. That could be a local work group in your computer system or domain. We want to make sure that we're hardening that to a point where it's not as accessible for um, users or bad actors. And then of course you have your computer settings. You can go through your operating system, your Windows services, updates, things of that nature. So in all, it gives you a good holistic view of our ABB control system at the customer site. We've been doing this for several years now, Dave. I mean, I know I found some weird things. What have you found on some customer systems as you've done these reports?
Well, French software packages for Microsoft, which was weird. Nobody at site spoke French. Video games installed. I think one of them, there was a Chromecast that I found on one of the networks. So those are kind of some of the outlandish and funny things to find. But a lot of the common findings that we see are outdated antivirus, firewalls being turned off, patches not installed, number of ports open, or just general applications installed that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, so you're saying there's a lot of board operators at night, right?
Hey man, people have to play Angry Birds and Candy Crush somehow.
Yeah. So
we do offer this reference architecture. This is the standard network architecture that we push for security. It has various network layers. Um, you can see down at the bottom here we have level 1 and level 2. That's where the ABB system sits. That's our 800XA system going down into the field devices. Focusing kind of in the middle here, we have this level 3. This is where we put all of our security appliances. So, if they have remote access, we put that there. Any of the centralized security servers, we put that there. We call that what's called a DMZ, which is it's a network between their primary control network and, of course, the IT network. And you can see on the right-hand side here, there's the information technology portion is all the way at the top, and it is a very small portion of this reference architecture. And that is we've blown up the operation technology side mainly because IT is not supposed to be managing the assets on a control system. We don't want them managing the 800XA servers and the clients. Um, I know just from my own experiences with the ABB IT, when they tell me it's time to reboot my computer, I don't have much choice. I have to reboot my computer. And we alleviate that by controlling the cybersecurity on the OT network instead of allowing the IT to do so.
Yeah, so building upon that, what can you do once you've built that network level or layering and put it all into place? And one of the first things, this is your low-hanging fruit. This is should almost be your normal preventative maintenance task on a monthly basis is your security updates and antivirus. So what we would recommend is centralizing both of those and distributing patches and AV from that centralized node. And we have what we call the security update service that would synchronize to an upstream WSUS and EPO or Symantec server and push those updates down directly to you. The beauty of that is that you're getting the validated patches and definition files from ABB. There's no second guessing it. If you've ever read our validation documents, they're a couple hundred pages. And then if you click into a Microsoft bulletin, there's a bunch of different articles and links that can get you into who knows where. You can get lost pretty quick. So
It's a lot of digging.
it's a lot of digging. That's correct. So this simplifies it for you. One of the best features that I think is, of course, the updates are there for you, but you're getting an antivirus update every evening, just about every evening. So it's one less thing to worry about, and you're that much more up to date. Because most of the time when we go to site, that's typically ignored. So it's 6, 8, 9 over a year out of date. So that right there is an immediate impact that can help protect your system. And then coming from that, Dave will go over a few other things, but centralizing these things uh, opens up other doors for more security standards or solutions to be set in.
Thank you. Yeah, as he mentioned, centralizing makes things significantly easier. You know, if you have a relatively small system, maybe 6 to 10 machines, it's not all that difficult to manage. But when you get into the teens and 20s and up, installing patches manually on every machine or updating the antivirus definition on every machine manually can be very tedious. And these centralized solutions make your lives so much easier. And another one of these centralized solutions is our backup and recovery or disaster management. So with this, what we do is we provide a centralized backup server. So what that backup server will do is it will use agents to back up all of the machines on your control system over the network and locally, depending on how you want that configured. Along with that, when we come on site, we bring you this server or we ship it to you. Depends on how close you are to me, I guess. But we bring you this server, has the backup console already loaded. We deploy these agents. We do a full system backup while we're on site. We test the network to make sure that it doesn't interfere with operations. We do some training so that site personnel are trained in how to use the software, how to recognize that the software is working, some corrective actions if it's not working. And then, of course, when you do a recovery, because chances are you're going to experience a failure, it's more often than not that machines are going to fail, unfortunately. That's just the world that we live in. We do recovery training with you. So while on site, we will teach you how to restore a machine once it has failed. And this is also a good gut check for us and you to make sure that you see that the backup management software is working. So we restore the software or we restore an image onto a machine. So one, you have hands-on practice in a controlled environment instead of having to do it at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning when you're a little bit groggy trying to figure out and fumble through instructions. Uh, and of course, we show you how to do the backup testing, which is huge. We want to make sure that you are testing backups so that when you do need to use those backups, um, they're available and you're confident that they're going to restore.
Dave, you gave that example of ransomware earlier. What if the system was impacted by ransomware? How would I recover? And if, just say, even the centralized backup was impacted as well.
That's a good question. So as part of this, we also provide an external drive with the service that we export the entire backup repository on. So as I mentioned, as part of this, we will install, or I'm sorry, we'll back up the entire system. And we'll also export that full repository onto an external drive. And we recommend keeping that disconnected from the system as part of, it's called cold storage. So don't connect it to anything unless you're updating that external drive. And what that allows you to do is to have a copy of your backups. So if your system gets infected with ransomware and your backup server gets infected with ransomware, which has happened to some of our customers, the example we used earlier that had happened, um, you have an external drive that you can use to restore all of these images without having to either pay the ransom or rebuild the system. So it keeps things significantly easier for you.
So one of the biggest upticks we've seen recently is utilizing device control. What's that mean? Making sure that your USB devices primarily are locked down and people are not accessing the system without your authorization. So it's still one of the biggest forms of malware distribution. So we want to help you lock that down. You can do it through domain policy, but if you are centralizing your machines, we use McAfee ePolicy Orchestrator quite often. They have this solution called device control. And basically what we're doing is only allowing known devices into your system. So that could be a CD drive, USB. We're stopping hopefully the plug and play devices. Your operators potentially plugging in SD cards or their cell phones. During that whole process, we're identifying the hardware ID and signatures of those known good devices and putting them into the system. So as soon as the next device is plugged in and the system's activated, it will not automatically launch any plug and play or things of that nature. So it's been something that we've seen quite a bit of an uptick on, and it's a really quick, easy way to add a really good layer of security to your system.
And we also get into application whitelisting. So if you're familiar with antivirus software, that is considered blacklisting. And antivirus definition has a list of known malware that it denies all of those signatures the ability to run. Whitelisting is the exact opposite. It has a list of known software that is allowed to run in the system. So what that means is you take an inventory of your system, all of the software that's running on there. We basically approve the software as we go through it. And 2 weeks down the road, let's just say somebody tries to install Angry Birds or iTunes, or a cyber attacker tries to deploy some sort of exploit on the system. Every process or application that runs is going to have a signature, and that if that signature doesn't match it of that whitelist, it's not going to be allowed to run. So this is great for what's called zero-day vulnerabilities, which is a threat or vulnerability found in the system where a patch has not yet been released. So there's no way to really block for it other than whitelisting, where you can stop the signature from actually executing.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, this is a growing trend of discussions. 70 million devices within ABB. How many devices do you have at your site within your control system? So, you know, we want to make sure we're securing all those assets. But if you're not sure where they're at, these tools can help you discover them in a very passive and secure manner. So, um, the cyber asset inventory passively monitors through your network ports using a mirrored span port. And it's pretty amazing what you can pull out of just a random or normal packet going across the network. So we're able to identify a lot of information out of those packets. Um, with that, it helps identify where is at in that reference architecture. So the tool will help build your architecture within the software and identify where that asset is being plugged in at potentially. Um, from there, just like the fingerprint and benchmark and those tools, we're able to interrogate those devices as they come online. So if it's a Windows-based device, we can go out and pull all the network information and installed software and to give you a full inventory of each device on your network from there. So it's quite a powerful tool. It obviously can alert you if anything changes. You know, someone's plugging into a network switch, or there's a new printer installed and no one's installing a printer. So someone's trying to mask it, you know, things of that nature. So it's a very, very powerful tool.
And we've talked a lot about all of these different solutions that you can implement into your system. And what we wanted to show you here was an actual success story of cybersecurity implementation at a site. So we had an ABB customer that wanted to validate their backups. So we offer backup testing, perform malware scans for their entire DCS, along with do some system hardening. So what happened as part of this? We went on site, we performed a cybersecurity fingerprint on 3 of their systems, and we did some backup testing. So as part of that fingerprint, while on site, we did some data analysis, and then based on the analysis, we performed implementation of locking down ports, locking down services. There was a number of system services that we were able to adjust and disable to make the system a little bit more secure. We tested all of the backups for all 3 800XA systems using VMware's ESXi virtualization technology. So we were able to verify that all of the backups were good backups. We also performed malware scans using a McAfee Stinger and a what's called the Symantec ICSP scanner. We've provided firewall recommendations. We did not make any firewall changes per their um, preference because there was a lot of adjustments that were recommended based on their current firewall state. So they wanted to go through their current landscape to make sure that any implementation they did would not affect operations. And then we also found and removed a lot of unapproved software applications in the system. So we spent about 80 hours of service on the contract for 2 systems. We were able to do all of this hardening on 3 systems, converting all the system backups to virtual machines, performing the scans offline without affecting any of the production systems. And then, of course, providing or performing the cyber remediations based on the fingerprint findings. Um, so now that customer, when we left, the customer had a full system inventory for all 3 systems, identifying all of their strengths and weaknesses. And had they done it themselves, collecting all the information and analyzing the information would have taken approximately 200 hours. So it saved them about $200 or 200 hours of productivity. And then also through value calculators, we were able to determine that we reduced the amount of risk by $1 to $1.5 million, assuming that any one of the vulnerabilities that were found within the system would bring down the system or cause an outage. It's based on 8 hours of downtime for that incident. And then in summary, just remember, cybersecurity is not a sprint or a one and done activity. You can't just patch the system today and then you're secure forever. It is a continually evolving process. Remember the 3 pillars: people, process, and technology. You have to focus on all 3. Just like a tripod, if you take one of them away, the entire thing will fall. And then start with the basics. A lot of the basics or the low-hanging fruit can cover up to about 70% of your vulnerabilities. That's patching, antivirus, and backups, those 3 right there. And then, of course, everybody's favorite buzzword, defense in depth. Don't rely just on an air gap or just on patching. Implement multiple security controls to increase the security in your system. And of course, ABB is here to help answer any questions, point you in the right direction, or help offload some of this burden for you. Now I guess we have a Q&A session.
Yes, we did have a couple questions come in through the chat. The first is, who are the main threats, aka hackers, to industrial sites?
So if you're looking for actual hacking groups, I can't give you actual hacking group names. However, a lot of it is unintentional, sending phishing emails. Just people send out random phishing emails, hundreds and thousands, and whoever clicks and gets infected is a potential target. But then you also have countries hacking other countries. That is just either a show of strength or just trying to gather intellectual property from another country, or even bring down the country's infrastructure as a point to just cause issues for that country as from a cyber perspective.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And the next one is it okay to update 800XA servers with Microsoft updates, and should updates be approved by ABB?
So Microsoft updates are approved by ABB for 800XA servers and clients. So 800XA systems, we have approval documentation for 800XA version 6.1 down to 5.0 is the oldest document that I've seen, but some of the version 4 documents could be, they're before my time, but ABB does approve all of those patches on a monthly basis, and yes, they should be installed on your system to help with security.
Okay, just had a couple more come in here. Are the firewalls shown in your diagrams hardware firewalls?
Yes, the firewalls shown in the reference architecture diagrams are physical firewalls.
All right,
The
and next.
Yeah, and just the firewalls that we were typically talking about being turned off, those are your Windows-based firewalls. So a lot of our findings through the fingerprint or just general service will be the Windows-based firewalls are turned off.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. The next question, does ABB have guidance for password policy for the various accounts, such as the service account, admin account, and operator account?
Yes, we do have current policies in place on our projects. So we have a minimum security requirements for those policies. But as far as the 800XA service account, and really all of the accounts, the operator account's a little bit harder to get away with, but we recommend complex passwords, more than 8 characters, various, uppercase, lowercase, number, special characters. For the 800XA service account, the password should be set to never expire, but the account should also have the deny local logon and deny remote logon privileges or security policies in place across the system, so that users cannot log in using the 800XA service account, because that is only meant to run 800XA services. So other accounts like installer or admin, if they're not being used by the system or by any users, and you're using unique user accounts, those accounts can be disabled until for installer until you need to actually upgrade the system software or install another node. Other than that, the install account can be disabled. For operator, if you're going to follow the best practices, again, it's the more than 8-character password. We do recommend passwords expiring. So that would mean that they would have to be changed roughly every 90 days. It's not what most people want to hear, but it is the best practice. Um, and we are definitely here to help you fight that battle, because I know a lot of operators that would prefer it if their password were OP1 and it never expired and it just existed on a notepad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Great information, Dave. That is all the questions we've had come in. And that concludes today's Tech Talk session. Thank you for being with us. We look forward to having you at our next one. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone. Goodbye.